Hey, y'all, this is Jim Gallagher Jr., and this is the Only One Shot Golf Podcast. And looking forward to another great guest this week. We always love to ask our guests and tell us about their journey, and what amazes me is just how different their paths are. And today we have Doug Martin, former All-American golfer at the University of Oklahoma, or Oklahoma U, and PGA Tour player, and now the head coach at the University of Cincinnati. The Bearcats now in his 14th season at the helm. And I can't wait for everybody to get to know Doug a little bit better. He's a good friend, and his golf team is really rocking this year. Ranked 25th in the country with a bunch of wins this year. He's really got the program going in the right direction. I got to spend a little bit of time with him when I was doing the LPGA event back this summer. And just a great guy and a great story. And I can't wait for everybody just to get to hear from Doug and get to know Doug a little bit better. Well, I promised you Doug Martin, and I've got him. Doug, you've got to be tired just getting back from Colleton River, but thanks for joining us today.
Oh, really excited, for you to have me on your podcast. It's great, and I've listened to a number of your podcasts, and you do a great job, and not only that, but on the Golf Channel as well.
Well, thank you. I know you're proud of your Bearcats. They've been playing some great golf. Maybe not had the week they wanted this last week, but past 9 years, your team's had 33 top 5 finishes. You won 5 tournaments. You've been on a run since the fall. You won the opening event of the spring, 3 wins this year. Just tell us how proud you are and how hard they've worked to get to this point.
Well, proud, obviously. I'm really excited for the players on the team. Anytime in a team atmosphere, whether it be Walker Cup, Ryder Cup, Curtis Cup, whatever it is, with golf being such an individual sport, we don't get the opportunity to celebrate team success. And I think that's one of the things with college golf that I truly love is when you do have success, you have it as a group, and you can learn to celebrate each other's success, not just celebrating your own personal success. But, these guys have worked so hard. We've had, a tremendous off season with the ability to spend a lot of time in Florida. All of our players are online this semester at school, so we really don't have to spend a lot of time in Cincinnati unless, we want to. So we've been able to get out, really have great preparation, and it really showed, I think, in our first event at Dorado Beach, how prepared we were to start the spring semester.
Well, you mentioned something that I've always been interested in, and we both have played at that level, individual. And to be great individually, you have to be very selfish, obviously. But you mentioned the team's aspect. How do you get these guys to buy in when they've played their whole lives as individuals to buy into the team concept?
Well, I think one of the things, when I look back on my days playing collegiate golf at the University of Oklahoma, we had great teams. Mm-hmm. And those great teams, when I got to school, I came out of junior golf as a number 1 ranked junior and went to a program really that was on the rise. And I got in there, and there was Todd Hamilton and Grant Wade and Jimmy Begwin. Well, those guys beat my brains in when I first got there. And as a player, you have to make the choice, well, do I want to get better, or do I just want to let these guys keep beating me? And I think that's one of the things that I emphasize in our program to all of the players is you have to learn from your fellow teammates. Mm-hmm. So right there, you're already a team because you're learning from other players. It's just like you and I when we were on the PGA Tour. We had to learn from other players that we played with and how they did things so we could develop our own personal games. And I think in this team environment, we have one senior currently who is a great example and role model for our young players on how he prepares. He never leaves a stone unturned in preparing for a golf tournament. And when you have that's the picture of your program, it's pretty hard for these young kids to not follow. So our work ethic amongst the group, how they engage with each other and ask questions really is amazing. And then, having me as a resource from my playing days and my experience, we've got a pretty good setup for players that want to learn and want to be coached.
You answered the question, how do you tell a freshman that's sitting at home that, hang in there, and you pretty much answered that. You watch the other players, you learn from those guys at Veterans, but you mentioned number one junior, number one amateur. And a lot of parents and a lot of kids that listen to my podcast like to know about the recruiting process. What was yours like, and what advice do you have for those kids that are going through that maybe right now?
Well, I think my recruiting process, and again, recruiting has changed completely since I went through it back in the 80s, and probably the same for you. And I was fortunate to really kind of have my choice, and I chose Oklahoma over Oklahoma State, Texas, Ohio State, various schools. And it really was, when I went to Oklahoma was young, up-and-coming program. Really, Andrew McGee was the first real great player to come from there. Greg Turner, who was a foreigner, a couple other guys that had great careers. But if I went to a Texas, Ohio State, some other place like that, I was just going to be another name on the wall. And even if I had a tremendous career, and I really wanted to be part of building something at the University of Oklahoma, and for us to be the first team to win a national championship in 1989, my name is kind of forever entrenched with that program, just because I was part of the first team to do it. And that really was a pretty simple decision for me as far as where I wanted to go, because I didn't want to just be another guy at a school with, and not taking anything away from the Texases, the Oklahoma States, the players that have played at those places. I wanted something different. And then as far as, recruiting, with young players, when we go on the road and look at players, we look at a lot of different things. And, certainly score is an important factor, but we also look at how are they shooting the score they're shooting. You may have a kid that's stuck at shooting 72 to 74, and he's not very far from that being 69 or 70 on a regular basis. He just needs maybe some course management, some attitude, not necessarily attitude, but just his ability to navigate around and hit quality shots. So we look at a lot of different things. We're really starting to pay close attention to kids that have played multiple sports.
I love it.
We're really looking for athletes. We're looking for people with where the game is going now, with the speed and the athleticism of all these young players on the PGA Tour and in college golf. We are really, really looking at athletes that can really generate speed. But, we also watch how they conduct themselves on the golf course. Do they have a good demeanor? We also watch how they interact with their parents post and pre-round. There's a lot of things that go into, because we want high quality kids in our program that want to come here and learn and be coached.
That's a great, you know what, that pretty much hit almost the entire questions I had in that department, because that's what I hear from coaches. How do they treat their parents? How do they act afterwards? I had issues myself with getting angry and all that, and I learned from that. I kind of grew out of that as well. But you mentioned multi-sports. What benefits do those sports play? Obviously, there's the team aspect, but what benefits do those other sports play? Because everybody's so concerned with, I got to specialize. What are the benefits of the other sports?
Toughness. Just strictly toughness. We have a basketball. We have an all-state basketball player. We have a kid that played quarterback and catcher. We have a kid that played high-level soccer. We have a kid that played high-level baseball. And to me, in golf, there is no defense. You have no defense. Mm-hmm. When you're playing other sports, you can be a good basketball player, but the guy that's guarding you is better. And so you have to have a level of toughness to hang in there, or just, the same thing with, all sports. Whenever there's a defense, sometimes the defense is just better than your offense. And, I think the mental toughness and the competitive nature, I played multiple sports growing up, and, to this day, I'm still very competitive and I want to compete. And that didn't come from golf. That came from playing other sports. And that, to me, is the toughness word. You can talk about it and preach it, but unless a kid has experienced it where he has to dig in deep, and that's just toughness is something that I preach in our program, and it's really easy to preach when you've got people that have played other sports.
Is that what helped you when you got to OU? Because it's no, hey, the wind blows. It blows and
Oh,
it blows and it keeps blowing and it's cold. Is that what you tell your?
well,
Is that what you look for?
it was one of those deals where when I first got there and I played like the first week to 10 days, and I was watching Hamilton and Waite and some other guys hit these shots in the wind, and I'm like, I don't have that. And how do I learn this? And how do I understand how to navigate the wind, how to hold the ball into the wind, how to flight the ball under the wind? And that's something that, I've really used in my coaching since I've been coaching. Is I don't ask a kid to a back left hole location to draw it or a back right to fade it. I ask them to hit their stock shot most of the time. Mm-hmm. But when we're playing in heavy winds, I want them to hold the wind to get the ball to drop straight, and I want them to learn to flight the ball into the wind. We talk about when you're playing into the wind, the number on the bottom of the club means nothing. You've got to hit the ball in the right trajectory to match the wind. And so that definitely it really advanced me as a player going to Oklahoma and playing in the wind.
So you think it's more on shot making than worrying about keeping your swing necessarily, because you can lose a little bit of the tempo in there as well. Because I fought it early
no
on.
question.
And that's what I see.
No question.
That's what I see now. And equipment's changed, and you're younger than I am, but equipment's changed so much. We weren't able to flight the ball. Maybe it's just because we didn't know how to do it as well as they do now with all the different technology and teaching out there. But we didn't flight the ball as well. Sometimes the wind I fought it. I struggled.
Yeah, no, the wind was, and obviously, playing the Bellata golf ball, which, probably only half your listeners here understand what a Bellata golf ball is, but it was hard to make a Bellata ball really stay down. And so, I learned to flight the ball at Oklahoma by, okay, if you've got 150 yards, you've got a 20-mile-an-hour wind, you hit a 8-iron 150, well, just go up 3 clubs. And that's how we did it.
Yeah.
That's how our coach taught us to, okay, just go up 3 clubs to where you have to hit it soft to where it can't spin and chase up in the wind.
You've got all the different technologies, the SAMs, the launch monitors. How have you taught yourself, and you may have already known that, how you've taken all this advancement and knowledge, and because the kids are growing up with this, they're not scared of it. They use it. How much was it difficult for you to make that transition early on, or did you pick it up pretty simple?
I've picked it up pretty simple, and we use all the technology, and we use TrackMan, almost daily at practice. And really, what we use TrackMan for in our program is not really the path, the face, and all these other deals. We're looking at using it as, yardage control, distance control. And so we'll try to get at least every kid in 3 or 4 days a week for some type of a yardage tracking. And so we might say, okay, today we're doing short irons, and we will hit 60, 56, 52 in pitch. We'll hit your baseline numbers. And so we'll hit 7 shots with each of those clubs, baseline numbers, and then I have a note card and I write down all those numbers. So we track those numbers. Then we go, okay, what's your in-between number between 60 and 56? What's your in-between number between 56 and 52? So you're basically hitting a 56-shot combine, getting your numbers dialed in. And so we'll do that all the way through the bag. And so that's just something that, I was a good iron player on tour. I was a good iron player because of how my dad taught me to understand the importance of hitting the ball the right distance. Whatever that distance might be, hit it the correct distance all the time. And that's something that we really focus in on our program is hitting shots the right distance.
I think amateurs struggle. They see that their ball hits and rolls 20 feet. They don't know how far it carries. They don't know how far each club goes. And I think I love the fact that you're using that and you're not getting caught up, because I was not very technical. I was very feel-oriented, and I wanted to keep it as simple as I could. That's just kind of how I thought. I'd make it the right way or the wrong way. But to use the combine, I think I would have done that. I would have practiced. If I'd had the facilities and that equipment, I might have done it more. And I think it's helped these guys because everybody uses analytics. It's not just in golf; it's in every sport. It's unbelievable. I had a baseball pitcher, Kendall Graveman, that pitches for the White Sox, talked about using launch monitors basically and stuff, even for baseball pitching. It's crazy where we've made the advancements. And you mentioned your dad. I mean, was he the guy that taught you? And who were your early influences early on when you were playing?
I'd like to make one more comment about TrackMan too, that
sure.
I think is really helping a lot of these players is, when we play golf on the PGA Tour, we're basically changing conditions almost on a weekly basis, from
True.
humidity and then to have that TrackMan and to be able to set that TrackMan to whatever elevation, whatever temperature you want. These guys are getting dialed in every week. And so I think that's something that is really, I would have loved to have that when I was playing on tour, to where I could track my numbers every single week. When we used to play out at Castle Pines,
Mm-hmm.
that was like a new world that you went into when you went out there and played. But, back to the question about, my father really got me started in the game. He was a multi-sport player collegiately, really good athlete, learned the game of golf in college, really wanted, started me really just to have someone to play golf with. And, we developed a relationship over the course of time. Not only was he my golf coach, he was also my basketball coach in high school. And so, really to, have a coach you really was great. And, one of the things that, I praised my father about was when I was growing up playing junior golf, he was hard on me in the correct way of my work ethic, my discipline, being prepared for tournaments. He never really told me one way or the other, hey, you played great. Hey, you did. When I won the U.S. Junior, I remember it vividly. He just said, congrats on a great week. He always allowed me to evaluate myself as a player. And he never was, the only time he ever got after me was when my conduct was inappropriate. And what more could you ask for from a father who, really just allowed me to, become the player I wanted to become, because he knew, that was something that was important to me, and I didn't need, someone beating me down or this, that, and the other. And he did a great job of that, and did the same thing for me in basketball. It was a great, I remember a couple of games in basketball where, I was having career nights, and I played on great teams for him. And I remember one night I'd scored 25 or 27 through three quarters and hit my first two shots in the fourth quarter. And I see my sub coming over for me, and I come out and I said, what are you doing? He goes, you've scored enough tonight. I'm like, there you go.
Yeah, you can't check yourself back in.
No, you can't check myself back in. But no, he was a great mentor. He still follows our program really close. He was actually out this past week at Colleton River and got to spend some time with him. And, truly has been an inspiration to a lot of young kids through his high school basketball program when he was coaching.
I think you mentioned it because he was able to separate dad and coach. Because sometimes I know with my dad teaching Jeff and Jackie and I, being the instructor, it was, is he getting on to me about me as his son, or is he getting on to me about, or is he, it was always a tricky thing. He didn't have trouble with it. I sometimes maybe struggled with that, but they had the right mentality. They wanted you, like, I think the best thing he said, he kept you in line when your behavior got out. Everything else was there. He wanted you to keep working hard and all that.
And one of my favorite stories about him when I was playing basketball for him. So we played fall golf in Ohio, and so after the high school golf season, I had to take my visits to decide where I wanted to go play college golf. Well, we were the number 2 ranked basketball team in the state of Ohio, and I missed like 4 practices and 2 scrimmages, and I was just starting point guard for my sophomore and junior year. I went scouting with him, watched all the games. I knew the teams we played as good or better than he did, just because I watched. And so I take all these visits and miss these practices and stuff. He calls me in his office like 3 or 4 days before the first game, and he goes, I can't justifiably start you the first 7 games. And I was like, what do you mean I'm your starting point guard? And he goes, you've missed great scrimmages and practices. And boy, that was really hard pill for me to swallow. And as I look back on it, it taught me so much. At the time, I didn't see the logic in it, but and the reason it was 7 games is we played 7 games before Christmas break, and then we basically started the second, 2/3 of our season. And so it was an unbelievable lesson, a lesson that I'm very grateful for and thankful for now. But at the time, when you talked about building toughness, that built tremendous toughness in me to understand that, there were other guys at practice working their ass off.
Yeah.
And I wasn't there. And he had to reward those guys that were working hard. And that's just the type of coach that he was.
It might be an OU thing, but it was a very similar story with Ryan Hibble, who's now the current coach at OU.
Yep.
Played at Georgia. I think he's like you, the number 1 junior ranked player, made a junior
Yep.
Ryder Cup team, started on both sides of the ball in football. Dad was the coach. He skipped the junior Ryder Cup. He said, Jim, I was going to let down everybody on my team. And I was like, wow. That's what makes you two guys such great coaches right there. That kind of situation where you understand the team concept. It was a little tougher lesson maybe for you, but I was amazed when I heard that story. And that right there just brought back that story, and he's in one of my previous podcasts. So it's amazing to be able to do that. It was a hard lesson learned. You understood the concept. There are other people and consequences and we always say that the decisions you make today could affect future things and opportunities in life. And I think that was one of those lessons. And he understood the team concept. They put the time in, and you hadn't.
No doubt.
And that was a tough lesson. I guarantee you that was a tough one to.
Oh, it was brutal. It was brutal.
We're bouncing around a little bit, but I love that because it's conversational. You mentioned different conditions, and I've noticed now because you all have the 50. You have to win 50%. What goes into scheduling as far as going, like you said, you went to South Carolina, you've been to Puerto Rico, you go out west. A lot of coaches now, because the regionals are everywhere, make up their schedules to get used to different grasses, different conditions. Are you using that when you make your schedule for your team?
Well, when I start and I look at the schedule, I really, number one, my objective for all of my players is if they want to play professional golf when they leave here, I want to have prepared them. And that's playing in all different types of grasses, weather, all different environments. That's the first thing. The second thing is I want to play in good fields every week. I want my players to see other great players. And I want to see them playing with them having the opportunity to play with the best teams, the best players, because they're still in a learning phase. And, I tell the story to the guys all the time. I retired from playing professional golf at 34, and at age 34, I was still learning. The minute I stopped learning is the minute people were going to race past me. And that's something, even as a coach today, I still try to pride myself in continuing to learn and understand. And so I talk to my players all the time about when you have a chance to play with a top player in the country, don't take notes while you're playing, but look back and reflect on the round. And say, hey, what did this guy do differently than I did? Or maybe, wow, I do a lot of the same things he does. How is he a first-team All-American and I'm honorable mention? Those are the things. And, I'm constantly on learning and observing others.
Well, you mentioned that. Okay, that gets to the question. And you've played against the best. You've coached the best. You've coached against the best. What separates that elite athlete or elite golfer from the rest?
To me, it's intangibles. I mean, you know this from walking up and down the range on the PGA Tour. I walk up and down and I watch other kids hit balls and practice when we're at tournaments. And to me, there's just intangibles. We have a motto this semester to, number one, play with confidence. Number two, to believe in yourself, and number three, to trust your teammates. And all those things. None of those are physical. All those are mental. And when I look at the great players that I played with throughout my career, the one common theme is when playing with Ben Crenshaw. Did you ever play with Ben Crenshaw and think to yourself he wasn't going to putt well? No.
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 Yeah, exactly.
Never. When you played with your great friend Bruce Lipsky, did you ever think that his ball was not going to move left to right?
Nope. It's always going to do it.
It was always going left to right, and he was the greatest at it, and you weren't far behind. But when you look at those little intangibles, when I see great players and I see them separate, they're just a little bit better putter. They're just a little bit better chipper. They're just a little bit better driver. It's all these little intangibles, and it's like, well, why are they a better driver? Maybe they pick better target lines. Maybe they have better control of their shape. Maybe they chip better because they use different trajectories. They don't just use a 60-degree or a 58-degree wedge and open up and use the bounce. So to me, it's the little things, but when it gets right down to it, it's that self-belief and trust that you have in yourself.
It also gets back to toughness and that inner
Yep,
drive to
absolutely.
beat your brains out. And
Yep.
That's the truth. I played against Bruce at Colonial, and we're best friends, and we're coming down those last 4 or 5 holes, but he was trying to whoop my fanny, and he did.
Yep.
And I didn't let him not win. I mean, I was trying to win too. And I know it probably wasn't easy because he was kind of my mentor, but hey, he was trying to beat me as much as I was trying to. People always ask, well, what happened if your brother, Jeff, and you were in the final group to win going down that final hole? I said, he better make birdie. And I don't mean it in a cocky way. It's just like, I'm trying to, he's trying to beat me and I'm trying to beat him. I mean, that's
a fact. That is a fact.
So tell us about your pro career. Like you said, you retired early. I had some injuries. Is there, when you look back at it, what are some of the things you're proud of and what you accomplished there on the PGA Tour and some of those experiences?
Well, I think, number one, it's so difficult to get there. That's the first thing. The second thing is the experiences I had. I never won. I lost in a playoff to VJ Singh at Westchester. The thing when I look back, and again, this is my dad, planting seeds in my head. He goes, it's not going to be the tournaments you won or the tournaments you played in as much as you remember, but it'll be the people that you met along the way. And I look back and think, man, the people that, number one, I had an opportunity to play with, that I idolized and looked up to when I was growing up, the places that we traveled and played, and you go to a new course each week, and that's the best condition that course is going to be in that week for the entire year. All of the volunteers, everything that went into making a PGA Tour event go were the things that I look back and reflect on and think, man, I was really lucky to have this experience. And, those days were days that I cherish. I miss terribly competing, but I probably wouldn't trade any of it for what I'm doing now because I really love coaching. I really love the kids on my team, and I really love investing time and energy to help them reach their goals.
Yeah, you're impacting people's lives. I think that's exactly. You mentioned Ben Crenshaw. Who were other guys that you mentioned? People you idolized. Who were other guys you got paired with? And
obviously I played some with you, and I always just enjoyed, the speed and how you played with, an up-tempo game. You weren't one of those guys that analyzed it and overthought. You just really stepped up. You knew what you were going to do and hit it. Freddie Couples, Davis Love, Ernie Els, kind of all those guys that I played with and idolized, playing with Jack Nicklaus, playing with Arnold Palmer, all of those things to me, just a kid from a small town, who would have ever thought that's what you would be doing and have the opportunity to do that. So
you mentioned Ohio. How about playing with Jack Nicklaus? Yeah. Tell us that the first time where you just, I almost couldn't even breathe.
I just couldn't. I really couldn't. I really didn't even know what to say. It was actually really kind of a casual type deal. I was playing with a friend at Muirfield, and we were both friends with his son, Gary. And Jack just happened to be at Muirfield at that time. And we just first went out and played, a casual nine holes. I had just recently won the U.S. Junior qualifier that was at Muirfield, and so he was aware of me, and so that was kind of cool. But just looking at him and how he handled his business and how he went about things, and there was just a lot there to learn. But I do have a great Nicklaus story from recruiting. So when I was being recruited by Ohio State, he called my house to talk to me. Well, I happened to be at basketball practice, and this was when we actually had phones on the wall or phones on the desk, not
Kids
in our
don't
hands.
believe that exists.
They don't believe that, and it was a rotary phone. It's a rotary phone at that. And so he calls the house. My sister answers the phone, and she goes, "Hello, Martins," and she goes, "Yeah, this is Jack Nicklaus calling. I'm looking for Doug." And my sister's like, "Yeah, right. And I'm Santa Claus." And he was like, "No, this is Jack Nicklaus." And my sister was like, "Well, he's at basketball practice. You have to call back at, this time or whatever." And so called back, and we actually relived the story when I got out on tour and had a chance to speak with him and get to know him even better. But what a great story.
Oh, he had to laugh at that. Santa Claus.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
You mentioned relationships and people you met. You were friends with Lou Holtz, and I mean, gosh, talk about a motivator and a great coach. What did you learn from him that maybe helped you with your coaching now?
Well, I think, number one, I was very blessed to be in situations with Coach Holtz, from being in the locker room to team meetings and stuff like that. And, the number of things that I picked up from him. And I'll just give you, one, I went to, 30 or 40 Notre Dame games and was in the locker room before the game, after the game, on the sidelines, just, royal treatment. But the one thing that I do remember vividly is his first year at South Carolina. He went there and took over a program that was a mess. And I think his first year he didn't win a game. So he comes back the second year, and this was my first year out of playing when I retired with a back injury. And I went to 7 of their games, and 5 of them were home. And Skip, his son, has been one of my best friends for probably the last 30 years. But I would always go and stay with Skip. And I remember Skip telling me that his dad was going to start something in the second year. He was going to have 3 or 4 kids get up and talk Thursday for 5 minutes before they went on the practice field. And really what they talked about was just their life and how they grew up and the difficulties that they had. And to hear these 2 or 3 kids, and I got to sit through 5 of those, and I damn nearly walked out of the room in tears, every meeting, because these kids were talking about the struggles that they had growing up, whether they, came from a low income family, but the stories were incredible. And what I watched was that team come together as one. And I think they ended up going 8-4, 9-3. They ended up beating Ohio State in the Outback Bowl. But just to see that come through, just because, number one, the players never took the time to get to know each other.
True.
And those little 5-minute deals that those kids got up and talked about really was an extremely powerful situation. And it also, at that particular time, I was going through man, I'm 34 years old. I'm coming into my prime on the PGA Tour. I have a back injury that really takes me out of the game. Whoa, me, man. I'm sitting through these. I'm like, listen, I have no problems.
Yeah.
And it really woke me up to realize, how about you look at this and be blessed that you just had 8 or 9 years playing golf on the PGA Tour, instead of looking at this like, whoa, me, blah, blah. And it really was a great message for me and really taught me a lot about myself. And so, how we kind of use that as our team is we're very close as a group in our program. And I teach our guys, I really talk to our guys, get to know the other guys on the team, not just as this teammate, but get to know this person and where they've come from, what they're doing, about their family. And so it's a big part of our deal. And I think that's the one thing Coach Holtz really taught me is family. and,
But
and trusting and loving each other.
you said that the third part of what your goals or your words of wisdom for this season, it was trust your teammates, and that's right there at number
Yep.
3. So that's no,
Yep.
what a great story. I remember Sissy's my wife Sissy's mom was dying with cancer, and I remember the same thing. I'd lost my card. I'm playing a mini tour event, Deerfield Country Club, Madison, Mississippi, trying to hope I get paid and feeling sorry for myself. And here's this lady who had been fighting ovarian cancer, and I sat there and go, wow. Wake
Yep.
up, smell the
Yep.
roses, because you're
Yep.
missing the point. So, the good Lord puts that on us sometimes and wakes us up, and it obviously was a wake up for both of us. And what a great learning experience for both of us. It did. It impacted both. It sounds like it impacted you as well. So that's
Yes.
that was a great story. But you were so kind. With Tom Abbott and I were doing the LPGA event. We got to play Coldstream. When we were covering that event in Cincinnati. What a treat. Tell us about where you guys get to play, a little bit about your facilities, and if you get to play that golf course, folks, it's unbelievably good.
Yeah, we are blessed. We are blessed with Coldstream being our home course in Cincinnati. And, truly, I look at it and saying if it had, maybe a couple hundred more yards to get to 7,500, it would be an unbelievable course on the PGA Tour. I still think even at 7,300, it would be a great test for the players. But I just think it requires, so many high-quality approach shots into the greens with the way the greens are bunkered. Great driving course. It's a blessing for us to have that as a home facility. But we're in the process right now of doing an indoor facility about 2 miles from campus with 4 TrackMan simulators, about 3,000 square foot putting, a nutrition room, team meeting rooms, and everything. So that's going to be a big addition to our program. That's going to be done June 1st.
That helps big time. The northern schools, you look at Coach Small's done at Illinois, and that's how you. And you mentioned y'all were able to get out and go down to Florida, and you play outside. You're prepared. Where a lot of teams, I know my brother went to Ball State, they weren't able to do that years and years ago, but you're able to do that. But team got ranked up to 25th. It did drop a little bit with this last finish, but I'm sure you're going to jump back up there. But when you look back, and I always like to ask these coaches, I mean, excuse me, how do you want your players to describe you as a coach? How would you want them to describe you personally? How would you want them to say, hey, this is my coach here? If someone was being recruited, how would you want them to describe you?
I think, number one, that I always have their best interest.
Okay.
And, sometimes kids today don't want to hear the truth, and they don't want to hear what they really need to be told, whether that's about swing mechanics, it's about their time management, it's about, their conduct on and off the golf course. That I want kids to know I have their back. I also want them to know I love them like they're one of my own. And that's a word that's thrown around a lot in our program is love. And we have to love one another. And, at Days In, we're out there playing for each other. And so, that's one thing that's been a big part of our program is our team unity, our team camaraderie is very high. Even the guys that aren't always traveling, they're very up in spirits, and they know that their time is coming. It's just be ready when your time is coming. But more than anything, I just want my players to understand how much I care for them and how much I really want the best for them, not only while they're here at school, but in their future.
Well, that's well said, because I think when we look at instructors or coaches, sometimes kids just want to hear what they want to hear, not what they need to hear. And a great instructor, a great coach is telling, like you said, tells them the truth. Butch Harmon does that. Hey, here's the facts. Sometimes you need to hear what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And I think that's a great way of separating. But what's up next for the Bearcats? Where are y'all playing next? And the rest
so
of
we just finished up here in Colleton River. We are staying on the road because we go straight from here to Sea Island. So we're going to practice a couple days here at Berkeley Hall in Bluffton, South Carolina. Then we're going to travel on Friday over to Sea Island and practice for 2 days over at Sea Island before we start next Monday in the Sea Island Intercollegiate.
You guys are busy. Well, I appreciate you being with us. It's going to be fun. I'm going to see you at the NCAAs. I have a feeling y'all going to make it to Greyhawk. Yep. I really do. I think y'all have a really good shot at it. It sounds like the young team's learning quickly from you.
as I like to say, if whether life or golf, you may have only one shot. You got to take advantage of it, and you got to make it count. And you have in all these guys' lives. Dougie, it was great catching up. I love the stories, and I appreciate you being with me today.
Well, thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me on. And I think back to our days on tour together, and blessed, and what a great family and great family you've raised, and all the girls and boys. Just you've done a hell of a job.
Well, thanks. You too. Love it. Love you,
Yep.
and appreciate
right.
you being with us.
All right, thanks.
Just how good was that? That was awesome to have Doug Barton on there. Did a great job. What great advice. I mean, play with confidence. Believe in yourself. Trust your teammates. Great advice. That's their theme and their motto for this year. Bearcats are a team up and rising in the ranks. Watch out for them to make a run, maybe get the Greyhawk for the NCAAs. He's done an incredible job. And if you're wanting to have a good quality coach and you want to learn something, Doug Barton's the guy. Cincinnati can make it happen. So appreciate him being with us. Appreciate you all listening to us. And I appreciate Steve Azar for allowing us to use his music. You can find Steve at steveazar.com. And don't forget to get Only One Shot. That's by VJ Trolio. Still available at Amazon. Until next time, I'm Jim Gallagher Jr., and we'll talk to you then.
What were you thinking on that play? Take a lap, and when you come back, maybe you'll do things my way. Let me tell you why I don't let things slide. If you can live through me, you can get through life. Around here, what I say goes. Out here, what I say goes. 'Cause I'm